Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
What a pleasure it is to have an incredible cook, author. She does it all. She's a business owner, Rebecca Wood, and she's got a book out that if you haven't gotten a copy yet, the Studio Mama Cookbook, you need to get it. Rebecca, good to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
You know, I had so much fun talking with you about this book, but also going through it. Tell us how the Studio Mama Cookbook came together for you, here at Southern Ground.
So I got the name Studio Mama right here where we are right now. Shortly after the studio opened, Zac Brown Band was here, and Zac came down and saw all the things that I had done to put the kitchen together, and he put his arm around me and said, this studio needed a mama. So the Studio Mama was born, but I cooked for all of the artists who booked the main room here. Everybody got lunch. I sourced everything from local organic farms, just like I do for my own family at home.
Right.
And what I couldn't get fresh, I kept in the freezer back here. I made my own pickles and jams and jellies, and it was really a special thing. Anytime I cooked things, the smells wafted up the stairs. So if we had like a special tour or something, and maybe not a recording session, I would always make cookies just to make the place smell good. Yeah.
We were talking about that when we came in here to Southern Ground Studio, Nashville, to where the kitchen is kind of in the basement. And so I was kidding you to where all the smells, like even if you just turned on the stove, would go up into the studio space, and then all the musicians would want to come down, right?
It's true. Every time the restroom is also down here, so anytime anybody would come down the stairs, they'd be like, it smells so good. And I would just have the stove on.
Wow. Well, besides that though, besides being an incredible cook, which you are, and a business owner, and we're going to dig into that deeper, but also you were the administrative assistant for 8 years, meaning you ran scheduling, you did a lot of other things besides cooking and feeding the musicians and engineers and everything.
Yeah, I say I did everything that had nothing to do with making noise.
Unless it was pots going together, right?
Oh, yeah. Actually, one of the bowls here has a bunch of dents in it because they had taken it upstairs to use for percussion.
Really? It was used in it. So did you ever get called in to play on a session?
I got called in to sing background vocals one time, and I think that was the end of that.
But they never stopped you on the food?
No, never.
Okay, and once again, going through the book, and what I really enjoy about this book is the tone with it. You've got an open that was written forward by Zac Brown.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing, but
Super
the stories make this so unique to me, and also the pictures, the art, even pictures of you from when you were little are all in here.
Yeah, I really wanted to design the book so that it was as useful as a cookbook, but also could just sit on your coffee table, and you can read the stories or you can cook out of it. And another part of the design is that when you open it, it lays flat, so it'll sit on your counter, and so you can actually use the recipe.
Well, and there's so many recipes that I want to make after going through the book, but I need a deeper understanding now. Pimento cheese religion. Can you explain this theology? Because once again, I'm a lover of all things cheese, and especially pimento cheese. I just wondered if you could delve into that religion.
Oh, yeah. So I grew up with my grandmother keeping this stuff in, she would buy it at the store in a plastic container. It was like sister somebody's, I don't know. But it was like this orange goopy stuff, and it had little red chunks in it, and it was mostly mayonnaise with some solid pieces, and it was just awful.
It wanted to be cheese, but it couldn't.
It could not. No. And so I worked in an office years ago, and one of my coworkers, we had a potluck every now and again, and one of my coworkers brought in pimento cheese, and I sort of turned my nose up, and she was like, no.
Good stuff.
So she made it and explained what pimento cheese is and means, and and how you sort of use your best cheeses, and you roast your own peppers and use Duke's mayonnaise, and it's this it's this flavor explosion, and you can put it on anything. You can put it on a burger, you can put it on a cracker, you can put it on celery. Pimento cheese sandwich is a thing, but it's a totally different creature from the
cheaper store-bought stuff. I just thought that was so interesting to me when I was going through the book. I'm like going, wow, one of my favorite cheeses has a religion.
It was a real conversion for me.
Well, I want you to talk about this too. There's so many great stories in here, and I loved one of them to where, one of the artists that was in had a cold and you came down and made soup. But I want you to talk about the Dave Grohl story, to where, how you ended up cooking and what you came up with for Dave while he was here in the studio.
So if you're talking about the peach cobbler, that was actually not here in the studio. That was at Memphis in May. So my buddy Billy Terrell has a barbecue team. They're called the Beached Pig. He's got a catering business here in Nashville too. And every year he goes to Memphis in May. And but rewind a little bit. The Foo Fighters were here doing Congregation for their Sonic Highways record. And so we hired Billy to come and do a whole hog. And so he smoked it out in the parking lot. It was a whole, he did all the kale frills and the pepper flowers, and they brought it down the stairs like in a procession, and it was amazing to be. So Dave fell head over heels for Billy.
Right.
And so on occasion, he will show up at Memphis in May. And I was there that year also. And Tina is Billy's wife, and she handles all the catering parts, and he does a lot of the food stuff. Right. And so Tina was exhausted from all of the things that she had done, but she had promised everybody peach cobbler, and then she was like, I don't think I'm gonna make it, and everybody's face just dropped. You could see the sadness was palpable, So I was like, I'll do it. So I hop up and run into the food truck and start digging around to find the things to make peach cobbler, and there weren't any ingredients. I don't know what she was gonna make it with, but so there were canned peaches, which is fun. But there was no flour, there was no, or maybe there was flour, but it wasn't self-rising. So, and then there was no leavening, no baking soda or baking powder. Right. So what I ended up using was self-rising cornmeal mix. So canned peaches, self-rising cornmeal mix. I fixed it all up, and it was a thing.
And it was amazing.
It was pretty great.
What I think was so much fun in your book too, on this, Rebecca, is that you give tips, and so it's not, and also I liked it in the beginning to where for somebody like me, such a novice at cooking, but I still love doing it, to where you explain things, you gave terminology, the words and the explanations before you get into the actual cooking. I thought that was so helpful.
Cooking can be scary for some people, and there are a number of things in the book that I use that may not be available to everyone. Right. So learning what things can be substituted and what you might have on hand is how I learned to cook. My grandparents didn't always have X, Y, or Z, and so they would reach for the next best thing that happened to be in the pantry, and so there's a lot of that in my book where there's the ingredients list, but if you don't have homemade whatever, you can get store-bought. If you don't have smoked salsa in your freezer that you made that summer,
right, exactly.
You can grab a jar off the grocery store shelf.
Well, I was going to bring that up also, Rebecca, to where your grandparents obviously helped you get involved with cooking and going to the U-Pick and everything, and got you involved in that. But how did that transition from you being a dancer for all those years and then coming back to the cooking, which you are doing for a living now with your business, with Hearts in the Mix, with everything you have going? How did you make that transition going back to what your grandparents originally taught you?
So dancing was not a career. It was I spent a lot of time taking lessons from age 3 to 20.
Right. That's
but,
a pursuit.
It really it really was. But I knew that I was not going to be a professional. But I loved cooking. I'm also a great organizational help. But with my grandparents, when if I wasn't in dancing on the weekend or, whatever,
Right.
we would sit down in front of a movie and shell peas. Or my dad's parents had these enormous pecan trees in the backyard, so we'd climb the trees and shake them down and
Right.
run under the carport so that they didn't hit us in the head, and then go around like an Easter egg hunt and pick up all the pecans, and
Yeah.
then my grandfather would take them to the hardware store that had a nutcracker.
Yeah, they would shell them.
Yeah, and they wouldn't shell them all the way; they would just crack them, and so
Oh.
then he would bring them back home, and
Okay.
we would shell them.
Gotcha.
And all of that stuff is pretty hard on your thumbs.
Oh, it is. I know. I've done my share too. But it's kind of interesting to me, certainly, that your father was a drummer and your husband, Oliver, who is also a member of the Wood Brothers.
Yeah.
It's like that you're still how intertwined, and even so in your book, with the music and with the food, they're all kind of together.
Yeah, it's how my life has always been. There's always been music. There's always been, large groups of people around the dinner table. There's always been, and those things together. My dad and my stepdad both were musicians. Like you said, my husband's a musician. I ended up working here in the studio after being an office manager for several other things. I accidentally ended up being a chef here, and it really just sort of launched a new pursuit for me.
I was wondering too, I know your book has done so well with the Studio Mama Cookbook. Do you think at a point in your spare time that you might do a second volume with more recipes?
Yeah, I've been collecting things since the pandemic. I left. We all scattered here from the studio,
Right.
and we're off to our own adventures. And so I have worked for other studios and other artists, and been collecting things, collecting new things from my supper club events, and so
You created a fan base just by cooking here, and now they want you to come to them and cook for them. That's a good thing.
yeah, I'm all for it. I'm happy to come to you.
Yeah, and so now you might, I was thinking about it when I was going through the book, Rebecca, to where you might have to take even recipes from some of these artists and include those.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of them are your friends and
Sure.
ask for you personally. Just a thought.
So many thoughts.
And besides the breads and everything else you do, it's so much great stuff. And I think that obviously you're doing what you feel passionate about, and to get to do the book and the cooking and the spices and the artwork, and you've got T-shirts on there.
Yes. So this on the front of the cookbook is my artwork. So I have a number of things branded with that. So my the labels for my spices have that on them. My T-shirts and canvas tote bags have that on them. I have hand-printed note cards. I have large giclée prints. I have all sorts of
I think you need
fun
your own
things.
YouTube video show or like podcast in your spare time.
In my spare time,
Yeah.
I just need someone to come and keep my kitchen clean and keep the video going.
While you're working.
Yeah.
As long as I'd be fed, I could be up for that.
I'm into it.
Okay, it's all good. Well, I want to make sure for our viewers to where, the book is available, obviously, wherever you buy books, certainly here in Nashville at Parnassus. But if you'd like a signed copy from Rebecca, I would go on to Hearts in the Mix and get your own signed copy. Plus, check out all the great spices and her other artwork, from the vinyl, that she's working on, the note cards, all the great stuff, and sign up for a dinner. I already signed up for the website, so I get the email notices now.
Perfect.
So I'm part of it. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll tell you what, I love the cookbook and your passion for all these things with the food and the music. and just incredible stories.
It's a lot of love to go into it.
It is. Rebecca Wood, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.